Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Franchise Euphoria. It's been a while, but it's Josh Brown here. I'm alive and well. It's 2018, and I think the last episode I posted was back in November. Now, obviously, I've got close to 200 that are around that I've already recorded to listen to, but at the end of last year, just got really busy with end of year stuff. I know that's not an excuse for anything, but this year feeling really good about launching on a set schedule every 2 weeks. We're really going to have a dedicated focus this season of the podcast. I'm calling 2018 the season of this year's Franchise Euphoria podcast. And one of the things that's struck me over the last several years is that I'm seeing a lot of bad franchises. I'm seeing a lot of crap franchises. Sorry for the harsh words, but it's just is what it is. And I want to dedicate this season to helping those who are seeking to franchise, who are seeking to turn their businesses into a franchise, to do it well, to do it right, and to create a great franchise, not crap that they sell to some unsuspecting, unsophisticated person just to make a quick buck. This season, 2018 of the Franchise Euphoria podcast is dedicated to this very thing. I've worked with franchises in a legal or business capacity for the last 15 years. I've seen many good ones, but I've seen some really, really bad ones. And it seems like I'm seeing a lot more bad ones than good ones of late. I want to eradicate bad franchises and promote the creation of good franchises. And I'm focusing on that in 2018. In an effort to do this, I'm going to be deconstructing the franchise relationship, explaining how to build a great franchise and working through the details necessary to turn your business into a franchise, including when the time is right, when the time is not right, and how to engage in the process, how to create a great franchise operations manual for your business, ensuring that your systems, your people, and strategy is aligned with your brand for ultimate growth. There will be more that we discuss on this, but I hope you get the drift. This season, we are honing in on the startup and emerging franchisors. I hope this is helpful and meaningful to you, as I know it is much needed in this industry. And to kick off this season, we have a great interview with Josh Elledge regarding a program that Josh and I have created to help early stage franchisors grow their brand through targeted PR, marketing, and branding in specific and targeted geographic locations. Hope you enjoy this interview with Josh. We had a lot of fun doing it. I think you'll find that he brings a lot of energy, a lot of insight, a lot of depth, and a lot of experience to the equation. So enjoy. Thrilled today to have on Josh Elledge, who is a PR, branding, and marketing guru. He's also become a good friend of mine. And today specifically, we're going to do something a little bit differently. Typically, over the last 4 years, all my interviews have been interviewing others about their companies. Well, in today's episode, we're going to be talking in large part about something that Josh and I are working on together to help you, the emerging franchisor, with your business and to hopefully grow your business. But before we dive into that, I want to give Josh an opportunity to introduce himself and tell a little bit about his background. Hello, Josh, and welcome.
Josh, thank you so much. We have two Joshes. You know, it's going to be a powerful episode when you get that much Joshdom in one show.
And luckily, and you're the smart Josh. So,
well, I know what I know, but certainly it's an honor to be able to do great work together because you, my friend, help a lot of people in this space. You solve a major need, because there are a lot of really great franchisors or potential franchisors that are ready to make that next step. But it can be really confusing. It can be kind of scary. There's a lot of noise out there. I think there are a lot of options for expansion that could be very expensive and very risky. And so I just wanted to let you know, just professionally, like I respect and appreciate the work that you do to just so freely give of your wisdom to help other people.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And likewise, I reached out to you because I had heard over and over again how how great you are in terms of what you do, and how you literally at your core are trying to provide great value to people and have built up several successful businesses doing so. So that's where, I thought it'd be a good match. And then when I spoke to our mutual good friend, Kate Erickson, and she had said, "Oh, you got to talk to Josh Elledge." I told her about my idea. And then when we connected, I remember that first call, we just had an instant connection. That's always powerful, that when you're looking to work on something together, that you got two people who work well together and their personalities mesh nicely. Well, let me do this. Before you dive into your background, because people are probably wondering, what is this thing that they're talking about? Let me just come right out and say what it is, and then I'll let you give a little bit of background on your experience and so forth. Basically, over the years of me working in the franchise world, and for those who have been listeners for years, you'll understand from previous episodes, I've seen a lot of different things and a lot of different challenges for both franchisees and franchisors. But one thing that I've seen is a consistent challenge, and I get asked about more than anything else, is for a brand new franchisor or somebody who's new to the franchise business. They were previously just operating, a location, 2 locations, maybe 3 to 4 locations, and now they've been converted into a franchise. They're looking for ways to expand and grow their system. They're small right now, but they're looking to build that foundation to where they can build a stable foundation of good franchisees so that they can grow throughout the United States. And a lot of them are having problems doing that. I mean, certainly franchise systems and owners, you may know a few people here and there. You may be able to reach out. You may have had people come into your location and say, "Hey, I'd love to become a franchisee." That happens all the time, but very few of them put in place strategic plans or strategies to further that growth, to really get them from their few locations up to 15 or 20 locations. So the idea in talking with you, Josh, was how can we put together a program that would help these franchisors do that and help them do that in a authentic, genuine way, to where we're not just spamming everybody trying to get anybody who could come in who's got a heartbeat to become a franchisee, but really focus on expansion through targeted geographic locations. So as a franchisor, really targeting, hey, this is a location I want to be in because I think I can be successful there. And then building PR, branding, and marketing around that to not only expand on the brand and grow the brand, but also to attract franchisees in those locations where you actually want to expand. That's what you and I spoke about. And I think at this point, I'd love to get your thoughts on that, and then also to dive into your background, which I think makes you such a perfect person to help in this venture.
Can I ask you a question first? And this is my assumption based on the work that we've done. And I'm throwing you a softball here, but
sure.
Would you say that it is generally more difficult to get your first 5 franchise locations than it is, say, locations 20 through 25?
Oh, 100%. There's no doubt about that. I mean, getting your first few locations is so challenging because you're most of the time you're a relatively unknown entity, right? So people they're just not familiar with you. Maybe you have some brand recognition in your local market, but usually you don't have national brand recognition. But almost more importantly, you as a franchisor are still wrapping your mind around what it's like to be a franchisor. And so now you're balancing running not just one business, but you're running and building a brand. And so the instinct for most of these folks is, well, we just need to get people in there. And that's the total wrong approach to this. And that's why it's so hard to get your first 5 is, you may be able to get bodies in there who are your first 5, but very often, those 5 may not be good franchisees. And so within a year or so, they may be out of the system and you're starting over. That can be very costly. That can lead to litigation. That can lead to all sorts of legal challenges, and it can cost you a lot of money. But once you've built that foundation, once you get up to 15, 20 locations, you're absolutely right. At that point in time, you've worked with enough prospects, you've worked with enough franchisees that you have a pretty good idea of the type of personality you're looking for, the type of background that you're looking for, and the type of person that you're looking for to come into your franchise?
My heart is absolutely for that franchisor that is at those early stages. And I know that that's where your heart is as well. And so what is it then? Like, how do we improve the decision-making process for that potential franchisee when they're looking at your business and saying, yeah, but this is untested and I don't really know you. Yes, it looks like you're having some success yourself, but how do I know that this model is going to be successful for me? And how do we overcome the fear of the unknown? How do we get them so comfortable with you as the potential franchisor that, I mean, it's absolutely going to be a yes. And what's nice is that we're going to attract the most successful potential franchisees possible. So, we want the most qualified leads to be working with us. And here's, Josh, one thing that I have known, and this is why we do what we do, is that all of our members that we've worked with, and the name of my company is upendpr.com, but you and I are doing a project together that has been so far pretty successful. And I'm really, really honored in the work that we're doing called Franchise 5. And I'll let you kind of explain the details on it. But I want to share some value here. Today, authority is a currency. And authority, if you have enough of it, you can kind of get doors to open for you like nothing else. If you're perceived to be super high authority and you've got a lot of influence in your industry, in your geography, then people are just naturally going to seek you out in order to find out how can they get a piece of the action, because you seem to be everywhere. And so that's what our aim is to create those opportunities. And if you are doing a separate marketing outreach, and we see this all the time. So we work with a lot of members who maybe they're seeking investors, or they want to improve their conversion rate, or they're spending $1,000 a day in Facebook ads, or whatever it is that they're doing on the marketing front. We want that work to improve. And so what I find today is that if it's a decision, and that decision for the consumer or the business, the fellow business owner, if you're doing B2B, and it involves a dollar figure of, like, say, more than $500 today, well, folks are just naturally going to do what they consider to be their due diligence. And I'm not saying that the due diligence is really that in depth, but there are absolutely some what I consider indicators of authority that people look for. And if you don't pass these tests, then I'm sorry, but the potential franchisee is not going to work with you, because you just don't look like you're ready for prime time. And in my experience, new potential franchisors, generally, they've just got some misalignment online, or there's not enough going on about them. They might be financially successful, and that's impressive. But if we go to your website and we go to your social media and we do a Google search for you, you're just not communicating that level of authority. You're just not going to get replies to your email. You're not going to get the raised hands from great potential franchisees. And they're not going to tell you why. They're just going to disappear. They're going to ghost you. They're going to disappear on you, and you'll never know. And the reason why is that you just didn't look like you're ready for prime time online. And so here's the good news. It's actually not that hard to impress them. And I'd love to, we'll spend a little bit of time on this conversation, because I'm going to give you some very, very actionable things about, if you're serious about getting ready for franchise growth, things that you're going to want to do immediately to start improving your odds.
And when you say authority, that's really a synonym for credibility, isn't it? You have authority through building credibility. And part of the problem that a lot of these newer franchisors have is that it's hard for them to build the credibility because, like you said, there's misalignment in their branding and in their messaging. And we all know this. I mean, the first thing anybody does, I don't care who you are, when they learn about you or your business, they go online and they go to your website. They go to Facebook, they go to LinkedIn, they go to whatever the social media tool is or tools that they use, and they check it out. And so just a simple thing like having consistency across all those networks is something that is often overlooked because frankly, and I can speak to this from experience, it's hard to like maneuver through all these social media sites to get consistently. But when you're trying to build a brand and a franchise, you have to do that. And that's one of the most important things because that forms the initial impression for your prospective franchisees. And my belief is that if you want to attract quality, you have to be quality yourself. And so if you're a quality candidate and you're looking at a franchise and you see inconsistencies all across the board, you're not even going to reach out to them. And you're never, to your point, the franchisor is never going to know that they missed that opportunity. So that's one of the things that I think with your background and your experience and your team, you do really well is you're able to go into businesses and look at how they present themselves to the world. What is the impression that they're giving? Because it's the same thing as the impression that you get from meeting somebody the first time. I mean, it's the clothes you're wearing, it's all those things, but online, it's your clothes or the website. You know, what's your website look like? What are all these channels look like? And that's something that's very challenging, but makes all the difference in the world, especially when you're growing a franchise system.
Yeah. And I know, Josh, that there's somebody who's listening to our conversation right now and they're saying, hogwash. It's all about the numbers and it's all about the finances. Nope, it's not. And what I'm talking about, does it really matter how many Twitter followers you have and whether or not you, as the principal, have a full and complete LinkedIn profile? Absolutely. It absolutely matters. And does it sound superficial? Yeah, it kind of does, but it's how all of us make our decisions today. It's no longer, well, let me just whip out some spreadsheets and impress you, because that's not why.
But Josh, to your point too, and I would just challenge you on, not challenge you, but I think it's not even today. It's how it's always been. I mean, before the internet, it's just as superficial as you walking in and meeting somebody for the first time. And to some people, if your shoes aren't polished, they're going to have a negative impression. Or if you're not wearing a certain kind of outfit, it's the same kind of thing. It's just happening online.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so another thing you have to consider is that people don't strive for business success just so they can have pictures of dead notables in their wallet and a big bank account. It's what the big bank account gives them. It's what the success gives them. And if you communicate to them your success and you show them what they can have if they hitch their wagon to your horse, then that's going to get them emotionally connected to the outcome of working together. And our job, Josh, is to create that emotional connection.
No, that's absolutely right. And that's one of the biggest things and one of the biggest missing value points in the franchise relationship is that you can hire your attorney, you can hire your accountants, you can hire the folks, to come in and turn your business into a franchise. But then you got to do something with it. Then you got to figure out a way to build up your brand and do it in a way that's consistent with what you've always done and enhanced by what you're doing, as opposed to just throwing stuff out there. So, that's something that obviously you have a lot of experience on. The other side of it is also reaching out to the media. So let's talk a little bit about that, because one of the things when you and I first talked about this program was I thought, in this world that we live in, the de facto, the easy thing to do is to try to spam everybody that you know and see how many hits you get. But the hard thing to do is really try to go in a focused way, tell a story, and by telling your story and getting it out to enough people or enough of the right people, you'll start attracting the people who you want into your franchise system.
Yeah, that's it. And you mentioned this earlier. It's all about who you want to attract and the quality of the potential franchisees that you want to attract. Because if you put out a bunch of spam, yeah, you might get somebody, but I don't believe you're going to get somebody. They're going to have to bypass a lot of their own common sense about who to do business with in order to do business with you if you think that it's just a numbers game. if you are projecting high quality and you make the right investments in your own brand. And again, you should have a great web presence. You should treat your social media seriously. And again, I don't want you to get overwhelmed in thinking that, well, this is just completely outside of your realm of expertise. This is why we surround ourselves with teams. This is why we surround ourselves with experts. This is why we surround ourselves with good, competent employees and leaders in our organization. We can't do all this stuff yourself. So if you're still updating your own social media and you're a company that wants to grow, you need to kind of stop that. This is like Michael Gerber E-Myth stuff. If you're too busy making blueberry pies, then no one's growing the business. Your number one job is to grow the business. And so I recommend that you assemble a Justice League of superheroes, who can each do what they do very, very well. I think that you ought to be very sensible in how you make your investments to make sure it's the right fit, which is where we really come along. And Josh, if you don't mind, I'd love to kind of share a little bit of my background, what led me to this space of expertise, because I don't think we really
share away, my friend, share away.
And so I was in the Navy for 5 years in the United States Navy as a Navy journalist. So I gained some background, I gained some experience in working in the media. And then some years later, I actually owned a small town newspaper for a couple of years, gained some more experience. And then eventually, 11 years ago, I started a company called savingsangel.com. And our mission is help consumers cut their grocery bill in half. Well, at the time, I didn't have money for advertising, but I did have a background in knowing how to work within the media. So I just started reaching out to every local media I could, local radio, local TV, local newspapers, local ad magazines, anyone that I could, and basically just said, look, I'd love to work with you. I don't have a budget for advertising, but here's the content that I could provide, and I'd be willing to work my guts out in order to serve your audience. And I don't need to turn this into a big advertising thing, but I just, I know some things about some value that I could give your audience. And so could we do that? And enough of them said yes, that we just started building our media empire that way. And today I've been in the media now over 2,000 times. I've been a syndicated newspaper columnist now for getting close to 8 years. I've been a syndicated TV consumer expert for about 4 years in 75 cities. Locally here in Orlando, Florida, you can look me up. You can Google me. And you can see exactly the work that I do. But I've been on TV more than 700 times in the Orlando, Florida market. And by the way, that's a powerful statement, by the way, when you could tell people, yeah, just Google me. You'll see everything I do.
Exactly.
But yeah, just my name is Josh Elledge, Josh, and my last name is Elledge. And you can see exactly the work that I do. But it was about 4 years ago, actually 5 years ago, that I started doing pro bono mentoring in my local startup community, just kind of a way of giving back. I mean, we generated over $6 million in revenue, spent less than $500 in advertising. So a lot of other startups wanted to know how we did that. I mean, it's kind of funny. I kind of gloss over those numbers and you're probably like, wait a minute, what? How did you do all that with no advertising? So we just started teaching people exactly what we did. And some of them wanted to start paying me. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess. I wasn't really planning on starting a PR agency of any kind. And I don't consider what we do to be a PR agency. In fact, we're really a platform where we believe, our mission is that we believe that every person has a unique message that can positively impact the world. And so our mission is to democratize publicity, PR, authority, and influence, and help everybody to rise. And we do that by challenging the status quo of the PR industry. We're about democratization. And we believe that a potential franchisor who says, look, I don't have 15, 20 grand to spend on PR, but what can I get for under $3,000 a month? Well, we've come up with a solution that helps them to grow their presence under $3,000 a month. And we've been able to do that, Josh, through a partnership with you.
Tying into that, and obviously your background's incredible and you've got a tremendous amount of, and you're just naturally good, I think, at the PR, branding, and marketing. But one of the things that was so interesting when you and I spoke was, I'd mentioned this concept of, whenever I talk to my franchise clients, and they ask me, how do I recommend they grow? It's always the same answer. I want them to grow and dominate their 100-mile radius. So if they've got a successful flagship location in Indianapolis, I want them to literally get out a map and highlight the 100-mile radius and tell me where those other locations are based upon their past experiences. I also think that in targeting those specific geographic locations, it's also smart to grow slow. It's sort of the antithesis of what others would say. I mean, there's all sorts of companies out there that are wonderful in their own way, but their goal is to grow you as fast as possible. My goal is to grow as smart as possible. And one of the things we realize in franchising is one of the quickest ways to kill your business is to overleverage yourself and get the wrong people in your system. Well, that happens when you grow too fast without having a good, solid foundation. So that's why we called the program the Franchise 5 Startup Package, because we're focusing on growing your franchise 5 locations at a time through 5 specific geographic targeted locations, where then Josh, you and your team come in and really help out with helping these folks with a press kit and helping to direct media attention and marketing and branding in those specific locations. And then I come in and I help with the onboarding of these prospective franchisees and helping the franchisors identify how they want to continue to grow. But the thought was, in my experience, and I've been practicing 11 years, I've been in the franchise world a little over 8 years, and my entire law firm is focused on franchising. And I've spoken and been around so many people in this space. And it is the question I get asked over and over and over again is, okay, now I'm a franchise. How do I grow? How do I market this thing? How do I do it? And there's great solutions out there, or there's possibly great solutions out there for companies that are in the position of already having, 25, 30, 40 locations, right? At that point in time, there's a lot of companies out there that can help you. Unfortunately, just like in the startup world for any business, right? There's not a lot of options for people to help you when you're just getting your franchise going. You just haven't, you haven't hit the economies of scale yet. You haven't had the number of franchisees, but it's also the most important time in the life of your franchise, because if you get the wrong people on the bus at the outset, it can really, really, really hurt you, and it can hurt your franchise system. And I've seen franchises, Josh, where, they've grown to 10 and 2 years later, none of those 10 are involved in the system and they're starting over from scratch. Well, the challenge was they just tried to get people in as quickly as possible. So the whole idea in a nutshell behind this package that you and I are working on together called the Franchise 5, which, by the way, if anybody's curious about it, go to franchiseeuphoria.com/franchise 5. And that's the number 5. So franchiseeuphoria.com/franchise and then the number 5. And you can learn all about it. We're not going to bore you with all the details, but you'll see if you go on the website, there is huge amounts of value that we're providing through this program. But it's all comes from a position that you spoke about a few minutes ago, Josh, and so resonated with me, is that we want to do this to give all these folks a voice and an opportunity at reaching their dreams and doing it in a way that's authentic to them and building upon their strengths and their vision for their company, as opposed to doing what so many other people do, which is, well, now I'm a franchise, I need to act like everybody else. No, you don't. You got to act, you got to do what's gotten you in this position to expand and continue to build upon that so that you can expand more.
Yeah, absolutely. So Josh, and again, what we're talking about is authority and influence. And so if you don't mind, I'd love to give some value, for the person who's listening to this. Give me some specifics on some things that I can do right now. And so a potential franchisee is going to be looking at your web presence as part of their quote unquote due diligence. Now, maybe they're sitting down and talking with you and that's great. And, they get some FaceTime with you and that's fantastic. But they are still going to check you out online. And so the first thing, obviously, they're going to look at is your website. If your website hasn't been updated by a professional in the past, say, 3 years, it's time for a facelift. Design standards change, and what was popular in 2000, 12 is kind of not real popular today. And it just makes you look dated. If your website does not look amazing on a mobile platform, well, guess what? That's over half of the internet. So if it doesn't look great on a mobile phone, then again, that's going to be held against you. And some simple things like if I scroll down to the bottom of your front page and it still says copyright 2017 or 16 or 15, it just looks like you're kind of asleep at the wheel, and you definitely are not a business that is poised to have 20 franchise locations. So you gotta get that fixed. And again, people are going to give you what I consider like the 3 to 5 second test. If you don't look impressive in 3 to 5 seconds, they've already made up their mind about you. And now all they're doing is looking for further evidence to support their first judgment about you. So,
well, no, that's so true. And not to interrupt, but I think it's so important what you just said, and just to even hone in on that a little bit more. I mean, one of the things that you've done for tons of folks, and that's part of this package, is that whole press kit builder, which is the idea of, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's a whole lot easier to reach out to all sorts of media and get attention if you have a succinct and a good press kit. Meaning, and you could probably provide better detail, but my idea of a good press kit is you've got a great looking picture, you've got a great, short, succinct, pithy bio, you have talking points, you have sort of the main, you basically serve it up on a platter to all these media outlets. So it makes it so, because all these folks are looking for great stories. All these folks are looking for great things to share. And if you can make it easy for them to do it through a very, very good press kit, oh my gosh, that can open up so many opportunities for you.
It really just communicates to influencers that you are used to working with influencers, and that, it's like everybody wants to do what they think is everybody else is doing or what's normal. And so if you show a press kit and you've got clippings and you've got questions that you could ask and that they could ask you, and you are showing off your expertise, then they're going to feel like, oh, well, I guess it's just normal that the media works with this person. And so then they will then respond to your outreach, your email or your tweet or whatever it is. But if you don't have that, you're making their job a lot more difficult, and they're likely just to ignore you. And they'll never, here's the thing, again, like investors, like potential franchisees, they're not going to tell you why. It's just something didn't feel right to them. And that's likely it. That's one of them. And Josh, this second area that I'd love to talk about is your Google search results. So if I do a Google search for the name of your company and maybe the principals' names, what am I going to find? If there's nothing there, then it's kind of a red flag. It just kind of communicates to me that there's not a whole lot going on. It's really easy to fix that, by the way. It just takes some concerted effort over a period of time. And that is that all you need to do is just start being helpful online. And sometimes it's working with other bloggers. Sometimes it's working with other social media professionals. Sometimes it's working with, filling out and having an amazing LinkedIn profile, for example, which I'll talk about in just a second. It's about bringing value to audiences. And if you do this, not for the sake of SEO, but doing it just for the sake of showing that you are an authority in your industry, and you prove that by going out and serving, then Google will naturally reward you for that activity. And again, that's one thing that we absolutely hold your hand and lead you through that whole process. But the final thing, Josh, I want to mention is that it's your social media. And there's two in particular. So I think Facebook and Instagram and the others, they're pretty important. They're super important in a B2C world. But in the B2B world, I think that the two that are probably most critical are LinkedIn, obviously, and Twitter, which might be a little surprising for you, but I'll explain why in just a second. Now, LinkedIn is an obvious one. LinkedIn is where you're communicating with a business audience. And so obviously, if you're a business that's preparing to franchise, you need to have very professional LinkedIn profiles for your founder, for the principals of the company, for any C-level executives. Honestly, need to look amazing on LinkedIn. And I'll be honest, I don't think you can overinvest in your LinkedIn profile, because it's the one thing that's likely going to come up on your first page within Google if I do a search for you. And it's probably the thing that I'm going to click on. If I want to learn about Josh Elledge, Josh Brown, that's where I'm going to look. I know that you're going to break it down for me very simply as to what your background is and what your expertise is. And by the way, if you want to know what a good LinkedIn profile is, you can just copy mine. Just take my format. Matter of fact, I've got a link on our blog and I'll teach you for free how to do this. But you got to take this seriously. And of course, obviously, if you really want to get this in gear, then it'd be an honor to work with you as a potential franchisor. But the second one, Josh, is Twitter. And the reason why Twitter is so critical today is even if you don't like it as a social media platform, like it's not really entertaining for you, that's fine. I don't care. It is one of the best tools on the planet for communication and reaching out to and connecting with anybody that you want. And this includes influencers. This includes journalists. This includes investors. I mean, this includes any important person, and I say quote unquote important, anyone of great authority and influence on the planet. And I'll just tell you that influencers have the ability to wave their magic wand and make amazing things happen for you and your business growth. It's true. They really, really do. We do this. We've been doing this for years. I've been doing it myself, and I've worked with a lot of great influencers. It really works. If you want to improve almost every metric in business, then you truly want to invest in your authority and influence, because it really does just grease the wheels for everything positive you want to happen business-wise.
No, I mean, those are some great insights. And obviously, I think it gives just a small sample of your know-how and knowledge. And the reality is, for many of you listening, you might be thinking either A, you never thought about that, but B, who's going to implement all these things? Well, that's one of the things that obviously through this program we work with, is figuring out who on your team is going to be the appropriate person to work through. Because again, it's not me, it's not Josh sitting there doing everything. We've certainly got teams that are helping with that, but we're also working hand in hand with your team. And that's something I want to definitely get across before we end this interview, is that this is not something where we just come in and do everything for you. There are certain things that will be done, but it takes some dedication on your end too. But it can really, really pay off. And it's really, really important that you as the franchisor invest your own folks into this as well, because some of these things are going to be fundamental changes to the way you do business, but they're going to be necessary and beneficial. I can tell you, Josh, one of the things that is the biggest surprise to entrepreneurs when they become a franchise or when they turn their business into a franchise, and I tell people this, but it usually doesn't resonate or sink in until after the fact, is that your role as the owner is going to change. And it takes time to go through those changes. But part of those changes is realizing that you're just not operating one location in one area. You have to oversee an entire brand. And so doing that and thinking like that means you're going to have a strategy for making sure that there's consistency across all those fronts. And that's one of the key things that we help do through the Franchise 5 program. And it's something very important. I mean, it's so essential. I can tell you that there are so many little things that together can become big things. And I think on the social media front, and correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, but updating your Twitter page and doing those, somebody might be saying, oh, that's not that big of a deal. Well, it actually is. And the way that you do it is so important, because you want it to be consistent and you want it to be something you don't have to go in and change every week.
In the year 2018, it is absolutely critical. And if you don't believe me, you are going to get left behind.
I couldn't say it any more succinct than that, my friend. It's so true. Well, listen, like I said before, this is a unique interview for me, because obviously it's talking about a product that we're offering through Franchise Euphoria, not through my law firm or anything, but it's through Franchise Euphoria. For anybody who's curious about it, definitely go to franchiseeuphoria.com. You can learn all about the Franchise 5 package. Before we go, though, if somebody is interested, Josh, why don't we walk them through what are some of the initial steps that we will do to kind of get things going, even before they sign up for the package. So if anybody's interested, before you sign up for the package, Josh and myself, we actually require that we have a phone call with you to make sure that it's going to be a good fit. The last thing we want to do is just put somebody in here who's not going to be a good fit and is not going to have a good chance to make a significant positive impact on their business. So why don't you talk a little bit about that initial stage that we put people through?
Yeah, there's a few things that we listen for. Number one is that we need to make sure that you are truly growth focused, because it's one thing to want growth. It's a completely other thing to want growth and to actually apply the resources and to be able to dedicate time from your team. So let's say you have someone who's updating your social media. We are going to make them more valuable. We are going to give them the tools, the resources, and we're going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting on our end to facilitate media opportunities. We're going to be doing a lot to broadcast via a number of different systems your success. But that said, we're going to need about anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, maybe even 5 hours on a really busy week of someone on your team's time. They don't need to be your C-level executives. They can be whoever is updating your social media or, engaging with folks online. Maybe they're updating your blog. That's good enough. They may be only earning $12, $15 an hour, and we will make them so valuable to your team. And that's what we want. Because again, Josh, like you said, your business, once you get into the franchise, once you start building franchise locations, your business isn't going to look anything like it does today, 5 years from now. It's going to be a pretty fun operation to be a part of. So we're really listening for that. We want to make sure that you've identified profit centers. You're going to profit from our work. We don't like doing this type of work unless we know that the client is going to be able to monetize this fairly quickly. So yeah, you're going to get some benefit in appearing more attractive to potential franchisees. Another benefit is that it's likely going to improve your conversion rate with your existing customers. And so we'll kind of want to explore that a little bit. There's a lot of benefits. Like I said, authority and influence seems to be the grease for the wheels of progress. It just makes everything work better. But, once we have that exploratory call, we offer some strategy, then, we'll engage. And then once we engage, that triggers a whole series of things on our end that we immediately get to work on. We do a website authority review. We review your LinkedIn. We start working on some systems to help you become more popular on Twitter. We start setting up some PR mention monitoring so we can find out anytime. Matter of fact, Josh, we were working with one of our Franchise 5 members, and there was a review that had been written a few months ago, and it was on a site that they had no idea that their business would be listed in. And because of the monitoring that we had set up, we were able to find that. And then we worked with them on how to deal with this particular negative review, because again, your authority is really important, but your reputation is, it's got to be gold, because nobody wants to be a franchisee of a business that's going to get a bunch of complaints online. That's miserable.
No, it's so true. It's so true. And, one of the things is obviously, there's no long-term commitment with what we do. We stand by everything that we're doing. And so if you do it month by month, and if it continues to work for you, great. And if not, if you're not happy, obviously you can cancel at any time. But, it's this one of those things where in my entire career, Josh, I've never promoted something like this. I feel a little bit uncomfortable even right now in our conversation, because it's promoting, a product that I'm a part of, but I feel so strongly about it. I just feel like there are so many people who have had bad experiences in trying to grow their franchise, and all of these companies out there that are doing it, they're good at a lot of things. I have not found ones that are very good at helping new franchisors. And so that's the sort of sweet spot that this is trying to fill, getting you from your first location to your 20th location, and doing it by targeting 5 at a time. There's really nobody else doing it out there. So that gives me comfort, although it's still uncomfortable for me to be here on my podcast promoting my own product, but I just feel so strongly about it. And frankly, I've never done this ever before, ever.
Well, I mean, and if there are other options out there, and we wouldn't be the perfect solution for everybody out there. So
that's true.
By all means, if there's a better solution out there and a better fit, we don't want to, we're not all things to all people. We want to make sure that they find the right fit. But at least, if someone says, look, Josh, I'm focused on growth, then we want to help identify the path that they should follow so they can truly experience that growth, as opposed to just wishing for it, but honestly, just kind of living in stagnation, because stagnation in business, it sucks. It really, really does. And so my job is to make sure that nobody has to experience that any longer than they want.
Well, thank you, Josh, so much for coming on and doing this episode. Obviously, I think your background and your value is self-evident, but hopefully it's helped educate people about some of the things that we're trying to do in terms of the franchise space and the Franchise 5 package. And so thank you for that. If anybody wants to reach out to you directly about this package or anything else, what's a good way to reach you?
Well, I mean, you already gave the Franchise Euphoria website, and certainly you'll find some information on that site about the product that we work together. But again, you're welcome to Google me, or you can hit me up on Twitter. I'm just at Josh Elledge, and that's ELL and then Edge, EDGE. Like I said, I am absolutely in service to small and growing businesses and startups. It's my passion, because I believe that for far too long, there have been elements of publicity and growth and authority and influence. It's kind of been a country club. And I love upsetting the apple cart a little bit and empowering everybody with the ability to rise.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Josh. And again, I appreciate all you do. And I know for sure you're going to have a fantastic 2018.
It's already happening, my friend. Thank you so much, Josh.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.